One can call 2011 the year of courts, political arrests, and pressure against human rights defenders, lawyers, and journalists. A year of a few bright spots, such as the release of now world-famous journalist Eynulla Fatullayev and youth activist Jabbar Savalanli, but also of continuing repression of basic human rights, the suppression of peaceful demonstrations, and the murder of writer Rafig Tagi. The 2005 murder of Monitor magazine editor-in-chief Elmar Huseynov still has not been solved, and it seems like nobody in the government is trying. Nemat Panahli, the head of the Azerbaijan National Statehood Party and one of the founders of the National Freedom Movement, was sentenced to 6 years on trumped-up charges of hooliganism. Youth blogger, 2010 parliamentary candidate and Harvard University graduate Bakhtiyar Hajiyev was arrested for evading military service, though international and Azerbaijani human rights organizations believe he was arrested for his support of March 11th Great People's Day campaign. Jabbar Savalanli, another youth activist who used social networking sites to support the spring protests, was arrested for the possession of illegal drugs, a charge that he denies. His release in December by presidential amnesty was one of the year's few bright spots. Between the March 11th and April 17th, opposition protests inspired by the Arab Spring were violently broken up by police. Hundreds of police were arrested and 14 activists were charged with disrupting public order and resisting arrest and received jail terms. The international organization Amnesty International named 17 people arrested in connection with the protest prisoners of conscience, meaning they were wrongfully arrested solely due to their political beliefs. Amnesty International presented a report, The Spring That Never Blossomed, Freedom Suppressed in Azerbaijan, which detailed the systematic repression of freedom of assembly and the fates of the 17 who were imprisoned. Human rights defender Vidadi Iskandarov was also arrested during the April protests, but was charged with allegedly interfering in the voting process during the 2010 parliamentary elections. Iskandarov was a parliamentary candidate in 2010 and uncovered evidence of electoral fraud. I have always criticized government corruption. I am not making my final defense speech here. I am raising criminal charges, said Iskandarov. Like many who never got a chance to make it to the protests, Azerbaijan Popular Front Party activist Shahin Hasanli was arrested at his friend's house on 31 March on the eve of 2nd April rally and charged with the illegal possession of firearms. State authorities also cracked down on the Azerbaijan Islamic Party for a call to overthrow the government issued by party leader Mevsum Samadov. Samadov and 6 other party supporters were arrested and sentenced to between 10 and 12 years in prison. Party head Mevsum Samadov was sentenced to 12 years in jail. Deputy party head Vakif Abdullayev to 11 years. Islamic Party Astara branch head Rufullah Akundada to 11.5 years. Party member Firdowsi Mehmed Rizayev to 10 years. Party members Faramiz Abbasov and Deyanet Samadov to 11 years. Mikhail Zulfigar was sentenced to 11 years of conditional arrest. Supporters of the defendants were roughly beaten by the police when they tried to hold a protest action in front of the courthouse. Three lawyers who had defended political prisoners, Osman Kazımov, Elchin Namazov, and Khalid Bagurov, were disbarred by the Azerbaijan Bar Association. Only one of them, Osman Kazımov, was able to win back his right to practice law through the court system. Nakhchivan, which is Azerbaijan's most close and repressive region, saw continuing human rights violations, including the murder of Turaj Zeynalov while in detention at Nakhchivan's National Security Ministry. A video taken of Turaj's body by his relatives suggests that he was tortured. Less likely is the Nakhchivan National Security Ministry position that he died of cancer. In September, IRF's Nakhchivan correspondent Hakime Dostamehdiyev was fined 1,000 manats after being convicted of diverting electricity to his car wash. The court case was the culmination of state pressure that began in early July when he accompanied German journalist Michael Ludwig on an abortive attempt to report from Nakhchivan. Ludwig was not the only foreigner who had problems working in Azerbaijan. State authorities also forced the Norwegian Human Rights House, a human rights NGO, to stop operations. The organization had become an important gathering point for Azerbaijani human rights defenders. In addition, three Swedish journalists, Rolf Weatherstreet, Charlotta Wikström, and Charlie Laprevod, were detained by plainclothes law enforcement agents during the April 17th protest and deported the next day. The release of journalist Eynulla Fatullayev after 4 years in prison was a very bright spot in Azerbaijan in 2011. Fatullayev was released more than a year after the European Court of Human Rights ordered his freedom. Upon his release, Fatullayev, who is now world famous, opened the public movement for human rights and has plans to launch his newspaper. The release of Fatullayev made it the first time since the foundation of IRFS in 2006 that no journalist was imprisoned. However, that didn't last long, as the fall saw the closing of Kural newspaper and the arrest of its editor-in-chief and one of its regional correspondents. One of the most important and increasing problems in Azerbaijan have become property rights. Homes throughout Azerbaijan and all over Baku are being demolished to make way for new apartments, the Eurovision Palace and the Winter Boulevard. The standard compensation in Baku is 1,500 manats per square meter, a price that is far below the market value. In addition, hallways and bathrooms are often not counted in the measurement of the square footage. Baku's construction boom and the inadequate compensation is forcing residents from the center to newly built but substandard apartments on the outskirts of the city. Residents of Shamsi-Badarbali Street protest the violation of their rights in front of Baku City Executive Power, while other houses were destroyed at Shamsi-Badarbali, Mirzaga Aliyev Streets, Azadlık Avenue and Neftçiler Avenue. On the outskirts of the city in Sulutepe, houses are routinely demolished by construction companies and the state oil company Sokar. IFS correspondent Idrak Abbasov's family's house was destroyed and his mother, father and brother were beaten and had to be hospitalized. The destruction of more houses in Sulutepe brought protests from residents and showed Sokar's use of armed security to seize property. Azerbaijan's Eurovision triumph caused great excitement. The preparations to host Eurovision 2012 in Baku has caused violations of property rights, report the initiators of the Sing for Democracy campaign. The campaign was launched by civil society activists who hoped to utilize the international attention attracted by Eurovision to advocate for greater respect for human rights. Apart from Eurovision, Azerbaijan found itself in the international spotlight due to allegations of corruption in the boxing world. According to BBC report, Azerbaijan paid $9 million to the International Boxing Association's World Series of Boxing program in exchange for the guarantee of 2 gold medals at the London 2012 Olympics. Court lawsuits were filed against Azadlık, Yeni Müsavat, Kural, and Gündem Haber newspapers, all of which regularly criticized government authorities. Kural Southern Region correspondent Aydın Caniyev was sentenced to 3 years in prison for hooliganism. Kural newspaper, which had been published weekly since 2002, had increased its circulation and began to be published daily. However, government pressure, including the arrest of editor-in-chief Eynulla and of Southern Region correspondent Aydın Caniyev, as well as the refusal of printing presses to print the newspaper, the confiscation of its property due its failure to pay 19,000 manats in court-issued fines, and the eviction from its office forced the newspaper to close. On October 28th, Kural editor-in-chief Eynulla was sentenced to 3 months of pre-trial detention for allegedly demanding a bribe from YAP MP Güler Ahmedova. However, thus far, the prosecutor's office has not produced any substantial evidence that substantiates Ahmedova's claim. Newspaper employees have faced continued pressure in their attempt to continue publication through the startup of the new Asi newspaper. Finally, Objective TV joins the Azerbaijani journalist community in mourning the passing of doctor, writer, and freelance journalist Rafig Tagi. Tagi survived a brutal knife attack on the night of November 19th, but died 4 days later in the hospital under circumstances that are still not clear. Objective TV also covered the drying out of Elmar Lake in Iran, the cost increase of subway fares, and protests against the increasing casualty rate in Azerbaijani army. Like the rest of the nation, Objective TV will be watching the preparations for Eurovision Baku unfold. Like the rest of the world, we will be asking, will Azerbaijan tomorrow be more free, more democratic, and more just than Azerbaijan today?